The alien queen was known across the stars as a powerful ruler. Her people respected her strength, admired her wisdom, and trusted her leadership in times of peace and war. She stood tall, always calm, always steady, like a guiding star for her entire kingdom. Yet behind her strong eyes and her calm words, there lived a wound that time had never healed. Many years ago, during a sudden and brutal attack on her world, everything she held close was torn apart. The enemy had come without warning, burning their cities and scattering their families. The queen had fought with every force she had, but even leaders could not protect everything at once. In the chaos, her most precious treasure, her newborn child, was lost. The memory haunted her like a shadow. She remembered the moment clearly, as though it happened yesterday. The sound of alarms, the thunder of enemy weapons, the shouts of her guards as they tried to shield her. She remembered clutching her child close, promising silently that no harm would ever come. But promises made in war were fragile. In one terrible instant, the child was gone, snatched away in the confusion of battle, and when the smoke cleared, no trace could be found. For her people, the queen remained strong. She never spoke of her loss in public. She continued to lead with dignity, commanding fleets, guiding decisions, and ensuring her people's survival. To them, she was unshakable, a queen carved from steel. But in the quiet of her chambers, when no one could see, she would let her guard fall. She would stand near the balcony that overlooked the endless stars and wonder, was her child out there, alive somewhere? Or had fate been too cruel to give her even that small mercy? Night after night, the same questions returned. If her child had survived, what kind of life would they have lived? Did someone take care of them? Did they even know who their mother was? Or had they grown up alone, never realizing they were loved? Never hearing her voice, never feeling the warmth of her embrace? These thoughts cut into her heart like blades, but she carried them in silence. Her advisors often noticed the faraway look in her eyes when matters of family or children were discussed. They would sometimes remind her gently that the kingdom needed her focus, that the past could not be changed. She would nod and return to her duties, but deep inside, she never truly accepted those words. A mother's bond was not something that could be broken by distance, time, or even the cruelty of war. No matter how many years passed, she could still feel the presence of the child she had lost. Her people told stories of her bravery, but none knew the secret nights when she would close her eyes and imagine a small hand in hers, or the sound of a child's laughter echoing through the palace halls. She had built a kingdom, but her heart felt empty in places no crown or throne could ever fill. Still, the queen carried herself with pride. She had to. For her people to hope, she could not show despair. For them to believe in tomorrow, she had to stand as though her own soul had not been broken yesterday. Yet she wondered if anyone truly saw her pain. Was she only a symbol to them, a ruler who never faltered? Or did anyone understand that behind the crown there was a mother who had lost everything? Sometimes in the quiet, she would whisper to the stars, "If you are still alive, my child, may you be safe. May you be loved. And if I never see you again, know that I never stopped waiting." Her palace was filled with servants, advisors, and guards, but none of them could replace the sound of the one voice she longed to hear. Even in rooms full of people, she sometimes felt completely alone. Time did not erase her wound. It only taught her how to hide it better. There were days when she almost convinced herself to let go, to accept that fate had stolen her child forever. But then she would see other families, parents with their children laughing, children running to their mothers with open arms, and her heart would ache with fresh longing. Hope, though fragile, refused to die inside her. It was that hope that kept her moving forward even when it hurt. She built her people a future, even if her own heart remained trapped in the past. To the galaxy, she was a queen of unmatched power. To herself, she was still a mother reaching out into the darkness, praying for a light to answer. And so the alien queen lived on, half a ruler for her people, half a grieving mother in her soul. She did not know that destiny had its own plans. She did not know that somewhere far away, Threads were being woven that would one day bring her face to face with the truth she had waited so long to hear. She did not yet know that the child she thought she had lost forever was still alive, and that one day, because of a human she had never met, their paths would cross again. Until then, she held her secret close, a quiet storm in the heart of a queen. The human who would one day be remembered as a hero did not look like much at first glance. He was not a king, not a soldier with medals on his chest, nor a leader of fleets. He was a traveler, someone who moved from one star system to another, helping where he could. He was part of an interstellar rescue group, humans who volunteered to explore abandoned outposts, ruined colonies, and forgotten battlefields, searching for survivors or lost knowledge. On most missions, he found little, more than dust, broken machines, and empty silence. Many worlds that had been attacked long ago now lay in ruins, their stories buried under layers of ash and metal. Yet he never lost his patience. He believed that even the smallest discovery could change lives. Sometimes it was a family picture, buried under rubble. Sometimes it was a piece of data that told descendants where their ancestors once lived. Each discovery, no matter how small, mattered to someone. On one particular mission, his ship landed on the edge of a planet that had once been part of an old trade route. Long ago it had been attacked and abandoned. The air was thin, the cities broken, the skies gray with dust storms. To most, the place looked dead. But the human and his small team began their careful search anyway, scanning through buildings that had been left to crumble. While moving through the remains of a communication tower, he found a small room half buried under fallen beams. Inside, broken terminals flickered faintly, running on scraps of power. Most of the files were corrupted, lines of code and static that no longer made sense. But one caught his eye. It was a file marked with a symbol he didn't recognize, an I, elegant crest like the wings of a bird spreading wide. Curious, he worked to recover the data. Hours passed as he adjusted the system, fixing fragments of corrupted code, piecing together bits of information like a puzzle. Slowly, words and images began to appear. It was a report written by someone long ago, someone who had found a young alien child after the attack that had destroyed the world. The human froze as he read. The report described a child with markings that matched royal lineage. It spoke of efforts to keep the child safe, hiding them from those who wanted to use them as a pawn. The notes were rushed, written in fear as though the writer had no time to explain everything. But there was no mistake. The description pointed directly to the heir of the alien queen. His heart pounded as the truth settled in. This wasn't just another abandoned story from the past. This was living history. The queen, he knew, was still alive. He had heard the tales of her leadership, her unbroken will, her legendary strength. But he also knew the whispers, that she had lost a child in the chaos of war. Could this be the same child? Could they still be alive somewhere hidden away? The thought sent shivers down his spine. If it was true, then somewhere in the galaxy, a child had grown up never knowing who they really were. And somewhere else, a mother had spent her life believing that child was gone forever. The human stared at the screen, feeling the weight of the discovery. He could have closed the file, stored it in archives, and left it for officials to decide. That was what most would have done. But something in his heart refused to walk away. He thought about the queen, not as a distant ruler, but as a mother who had carried grief for years. He imagined what it must feel like to believe your child was gone, when the truth might be different. He couldn't ignore it. He couldn't leave it behind. So he copied every detail, every coordinate, every clue the file had. Then he began to search further, following threads that others might not have bothered with. He scoured old trade records, survivor logs, even fragments of intercepted enemy communication. Piece by piece, the trail grew clearer. The child had survived. The child had been moved to a remote world far from the center of conflict. And though many years had passed, there were signs that the child might still be alive. The human sat, back in his chair, Staring at the map of stars displayed before him, he felt a pull in his chest as though the universe itself was urging him forward. He was not a soldier, he was not rich or powerful, but in this moment, he knew he had found a mission that mattered more than anything he had ever done. The Queen had lost hope long ago, but hope was still alive, waiting to be delivered. The journey would not be simple. He knew that. Whoever had hidden the child would not have done so lightly. There would be those who wanted to keep the secret buried, perhaps even enemies who still saw the child as a threat to their ambitions. The path ahead would be full of risks, but he also knew that if he turned back now, the truth might remain hidden forever. He clenched his fists, determination filling his heart. This wasn't just about uncovering history. This was about reuniting a family, about healing a wound that had never closed. And so, the human began preparing for what lay ahead. He gathered supplies, studied maps, and sent quiet messages to trusted contacts who might help him. He didn't tell many what he had found. Secrets like this were too dangerous to share freely. But deep inside, he promised himself something simple. No matter how far he had to go, no matter how dangerous the road became, he would do everything in his power to bring the child back to the Queen. He imagined the moment it might happen, the look on the Queen's face if she saw her child again after so many years. He imagined the child's confusion, then their joy when they learned who they truly were. These thoughts fueled his resolve, turning his discovery into a mission that nothing could shake. Far away, the Queen still lived in sorrow, unaware of the treasure that waited to be returned. She had no idea that a human stranger had stumbled upon the first threads of hope she thought she had lost forever. She did not yet know that her long nights of grief were nearing an end. The human packed his ship, charted his course, and set off toward the stars. Somewhere ahead lay answers. Somewhere ahead, a child was waiting. And though he was only one man, his heart carried a strength greater than entire armies, the determination to heal the bond between a mother and her child. The human knew the path ahead would not be simple. Finding the child of the alien queen was more than just following a map. It meant stepping into danger, walking into places where trust was rare, and facing people who would rather keep the truth buried forever. Still, he did not turn back. The thought of a mother and child reuniting after so many years gave him strength greater than fear. His ship cut through the stars, moving from one system to the next. Every stop brought him closer to the last known location of the child. But each stop also revealed how difficult this mission truly was. The world where the child had been taken was not peaceful. It was a place of harsh deserts, rough people, and powerful groups that controlled everything with suspicion and greed. Outsiders were rarely welcomed, and those who came looking for secrets often disappeared. When his ship landed on the planet, the human stepped out into a land of red skies and endless dust. The city he entered was built from stone and metal, worn down by storms and time. The people watched him closely, their eyes sharp, their expressions unreadable. To them, he was just another stranger, and strangers were not trusted. He began carefully. He asked questions in markets, listened quietly in crowded taverns, and studied old records hidden in the corners of libraries. He did not reveal the full truth of why he was there. If people knew he was looking for a child tied to the alien queen, the mission would end before it had a chance to begin. Instead, he used patience, weaving his way slowly through the city's whispers. At first, his search brought nothing. Some told him there were no children of importance here. Others grew cold and silent when he asked too many questions. Yet, piece by piece, he began to notice patterns. Old stories told of a child found many years ago, a child raised quietly away from attention. Most dismissed these tales as rumors, but the human knew better. The small details matched too closely with what he had already uncovered. Still, the path was dangerous. One night, as he left a crowded street, he felt the shadow of someone following him. His hand instinctively went to the tool at his belt. Not a weapon of war, but something he could use to defend himself. The footsteps grew, closer, until finally a figure stepped forward. It was a local trader, a man with sharp eyes who spoke in a low voice. "You ask too many questions, traveler," the man said. "Questions that can get you killed." The human did not back down. Instead, he met the man's gaze calmly. "I only want the truth. If there is a child here who does not belong to this world, I need to know." For a long moment, the trader studied him. Then, with a sigh, he motioned for the human to follow. In a quiet corner of the city, the man spoke again. "There is such a child, but not everyone wants her found. To some, she is a threat. To others, she is a treasure they wish to control. If you truly seek her, you must be ready to fight not only against danger but against the lies that surround her." The human nodded. He had expected nothing less. Days turned into weeks as he continued the search. Every step was harder than the last. There were those who tried to mislead him, sending him down false paths. There were nights when he had to move, quickly, escaping those who wanted him gone. Yet he never gave up. His determination was a light that guided him, even in the darkest corners of the city. Finally, his patience was rewarded. He found records hidden in an old safe house, documents that confirmed the child was alive. She had been kept under protection by a small group who feared what would happen if her identity was revealed. They had raised her away from power, away from the throne that was her birthright. To them, she was not a princess or an heir. She was just a child they swore to keep safe. Reading the records, the human felt both relief and sorrow. Relief because the queen's child had indeed survived. Sorrow because the child had grown up never knowing her mother, never hearing the truth of who she was, but the journey was far from over. The records also revealed that others had learned of the child's existence. Dangerous people, ones who saw her as a tool to control the alien queen or to destabilize her rule. These groups were already searching, already moving closer. If the human did not act quickly, the child could be taken again, and this time perhaps forever. With urgency in his heart, the human prepared for the hardest part of his mission. He would have to reach the child before the enemies did. He would have to protect her, earn her trust, and bring her across the stars back to the mother who had never stopped waiting. He thought of the queen often during those nights. He imagined her still looking at the stars, believing her child was lost. He imagined her grief, her silent hope. He carried those images with him like armor, reminding himself why he could not fail. The world grew more dangerous around him. Each step closer to the truth made his enemies more aware of him. Yet he pressed on, refusing to give in to fear. This was more than a mission now, it was a promise. He had promised himself that he would not stop until the queen was reunited with her child. And promises, once made, were not something he ever broke. Far across the galaxy, the queen still sat in her palace, unaware that a human she had never met was risking everything for her happiness. She did not yet know that destiny was moving quietly, step by step closer to her door. But soon, their paths would join. And when they did, the galaxy would witness a reunion that no storm, no enemy, no passage of time could prevent. The human's journey led him deeper into danger, but also closer to the truth. After weeks of searching, listening, and following fragile leads, he finally reached the place where the queen's child was said to live. It was a quiet settlement on the edge of the world, far from the crowded city. The houses were simple, built from stone and clay, and the air was calm, as if untouched by the troubles of the galaxy. He approached carefully, not wanting to draw attention. He had learned enough to know that powerful enemies were also searching. If they reached the child first, everything would be lost. As he walked through the village, he saw people who lived ordinary lives, farmers, craftsmen, families who only wished for peace. And among them, hidden in plain sight, was the one he had come so far to find. The child, no longer an infant but not yet grown, carried herself with quiet strength. She was helping elders carry baskets, speaking kindly to younger children, and moving with a grace that seemed natural. To everyone else, she was just another child of the village, but to the human, she was unmistakable. The small crest-shaped marking on her forehead, the same one described in the old records, told him who she truly was. His heart tightened as he watched. Here she was, the daughter of the alien queen, alive and well. For years her mother had grieved, believing she was gone forever. Yet she had been living quietly under the protection of strangers. The human wanted to run forward to tell her the truth immediately, but he knew it was not that simple. She had no idea who she really was. To her, the queen was a distant name, a story told in whispers. To reveal everything at once might frighten her or make her turn away. So he waited, watching from a distance for a chance to speak. Days passed as he stayed hidden in the village, helping where he could so no one would question his presence. He fixed broken tools, shared supplies, and spoke with kindness to those around him. Slowly the villagers began to trust him. And then at last, the moment came. He found her sitting alone near the edge of the fields, looking out at the horizon. With careful steps he approached and spoke gently. "You remind me of someone," he said. The child turned, her eyes curious but cautious. "Of who?" she asked. "Of a mother who has waited her whole life for her child to return," the human replied softly. She frowned, unsure of his meaning. "I don't understand." He sat down nearby, leaving space so she would not feel threatened. Then, in simple words, he told her the story. He spoke of the great queen who ruled far away, a queen who had lost her child in the chaos of war. He told her how the queen had searched, how she had never stopped hoping, even when everyone else believed there was no chance. And then he told her of the records he had found, the journey he had taken, and the truth that could no longer be hidden. At first, she shook her head. "That can't be me," she whispered. "I'm just an ordinary girl." The human's voice was steady. "Look inside yourself. Have you never wondered why you feel different? Why others look at you with both respect and caution? You are not ordinary. You are the daughter of a queen, and she has never stopped waiting for you." Her eyes filled with tears, not of fear, but of confusion. The life she had known was simple, safe and small. But now this stranger was telling her that her real life was something greater, something she had never imagined. Before she could reply, the sound of shouts echoed from the village. The human's heart sank. Enemies had arrived. The ones who wanted her for their own purposes had finally found the trail. Smoke rose as armed figures stormed the settlement, demanding the villagers reveal the child. The human moved quickly, pulling her behind him. "Listen to me," he said firmly. "I made a promise to your mother, though she does not know me. I promised I would bring you to her, but now you must trust me, or they will take you away." Fear shone in her eyes, but she nodded. Together, they ran through the narrow paths of the village, avoiding the soldiers. The human used his wits, leading her through hidden routes, past old ruins, and into the safety of the hills beyond. Behind them, the sound of pursuit grew louder, but his determination burned brighter. He would not fail. For days they traveled across harsh landscapes, dry deserts by day, cold winds by night. The child asked questions as they walked, her voice trembling with both doubt and wonder. "Will she really want me? After all this time?" The human looked at her with kindness. "You are her heart. She never stopped wanting you. Every night she looked to the stars and prayed for you. She thinks she lost you forever, but when she sees you, her heart will finally be whole." The words gave her strength. Slowly, the fear in her eyes turned into hope. At last, after endless travel, they reached the human's ship hidden in the rocky valleys. He guided her aboard, setting the coordinates for the Queen's world. As the engines roared to life, the child stood at the window watching the planet shrink behind them. She was leaving the only home she had ever known, stepping into a future full of uncertainty. Yet deep inside she felt a pull, as though her heart already knew where she truly belonged. The journey across the stars was long but safe, and when at last the Queen's palace came into view, the child's breath caught in her throat. The towers shone like silver under the sun, rising proudly above the land. She had never seen anything so grand, and yet it felt strangely familiar, as though her soul recognized it. When the ship landed, guards surrounded them, ready to stop any intruder. But when the Queen herself stepped forward, the human's mission finally reached its end. For a moment, the Queen simply stared, her eyes wide, her body trembling. She saw the child standing there, alive, real, no longer a dream of the past. Her knees gave way as tears streamed down her face, tears she had held back for years. The child, too, could not hold back. Something deep inside her recognized this woman, not by face but by bond. She ran forward, and the Queen opened her arms, pulling her into an embrace that erased all distance, all pain, all years of separation. The world around them faded away. There was no crown, no palace, no audience. There was only a mother holding her child, and a child finally finding the place she belonged. The human stepped back quietly, his heart full. He had kept his promise. He had carried hope across the stars and returned what was lost. And as he watched the Queen and her daughter, together at last, he knew every risk, every danger, every struggle had been worth it. The palace was filled with a quiet energy unlike any other day the alien Queen had experienced. Word had spread quickly that her child had returned, but still, nothing could compare to the reality of seeing her standing in front of her. The Queen held her daughter's hands, looking into her eyes as though trying to memorize every detail. Years of pain, longing, and uncertainty melted away, replaced by a joy so profound it took her breath. The child looked around, taking in the grandeur of the palace. It was nothing like the village she had known, yet she felt safe here. She looked back at the human, who had guided her across dangerous worlds, risked everything for her, and never wavered in his promise. She wanted to thank him, but words were not enough. The human only smiled gently, stepping back to let the reunion happen. He had done what he had set out to do, and for the first time in weeks, he could breathe. The Queen spoke softly, almost as if afraid the moment might vanish if she spoke too loudly. "I never believed I would see you again," she said, her voice trembling. "I thought I had lost you forever. But here you are, my child. My heart is whole again." The child stepped closer, feeling the warmth and love in the Queen's voice. "Mother, and I never knew you," she said, her words shaking. "But I think I've always felt you somewhere, like a light I couldn't reach." The Queen pulled her into a gentle embrace. "You've been protected, kept safe, and now you are finally here. I will never let you go again." The human watched quietly, knowing his role in this story had reached its natural end. He had reunited mother and child, but he also understood that the bond they were forming would continue to grow long after he left. The Queen's eyes met his, and for a brief moment, she silently thanked him. No words were necessary. The gratitude and relief were written plainly in her gaze. The days that followed were filled with careful introductions, explanations, and celebrations. The child began learning about her true heritage, guided gently by the Queen and her advisors. She learned the history of her people, the sacrifices made, and the stories of her mother's courage and leadership. It was a lot to take in, but the Queen allowed her to learn at her own pace, always patient, always encouraging. Meanwhile, the human quietly prepared to leave. He had risked his life, crossed countless dangers, and his mission was complete. Yet leaving was bittersweet. He had grown attached to both the Queen and her daughter, witnessing the joy he had helped create. Still, he knew his journey had other paths to follow, other lives to touch. Before departing, the Queen called him to her side. She spoke with sincerity, her voice strong yet warm. "You have done more than I can ever repay. You have brought my child back to me, restored a part of my heart I thought was lost forever. I owe you my deepest gratitude, not just as a queen, but as a mother." The human bowed his head. "I only did what I could. The courage and love belong to you, not to me. I was only the one who carried hope across the stars." The Queen smiled, her eyes shining. "And for that, you will always be welcome here. You are a part of our story now, a part of our family." As the human left the palace, he felt a sense of quiet satisfaction. He had seen the power of hope, the strength of a mother's love, and the courage it takes to reunite what was lost. He thought of the journey, the risks, the challenges, the moments of doubt, and knew that every step had been worth it. Far away, the child began to grow more confident in her role. She learned not just about her royal duties, but also about love, compassion, and the value of human courage. She asked questions, listened carefully, and gradually discovered her own strengths. With her mother by her side, she began to envision a future not just as a princess, but as someone who could make a difference in the galaxy. The queen, for her part, felt renewed. The child's presence brought a new energy to her life. Her responsibilities, as a ruler, felt lighter, not because they had changed, but because she now carried her daughter's laughter, curiosity, and love with her wherever she went. She began to see that the greatest victories are not always in battle, but in the bonds we nurture and protect. Months passed, and the story of their reunion spread across the stars. Other worlds spoke of the courage of a human who dared to follow a thread of hope across dangerous worlds. They spoke of the queen, whose love never faded, and of the child who had been hidden, protected, and finally returned. And slowly, peace and understanding grew between species, inspired by a story of trust, bravery, and love that transcended borders. In quiet moments, the queen would look at her daughter and remember the long years of longing, of wondering, and of dreaming. She would smile, knowing that the child she had lost was now forever a part of her life. And sometimes she would glance toward the stars, silently sending thanks to the human hero whose courage had changed everything. The child, too, would grow to understand the gift she had been given. She would learn the meaning of patience, of trust, and of the courage it takes to follow someone who believes in a higher purpose. She would carry the memory of the human not as a stranger, but as a guardian, a symbol of hope, and a reminder that love often travels across the most unexpected paths to find its way home. And so, life continued in the palace, not without challenges, but with a new sense of unity and purpose. The queen and her child shared laughter, knowledge, and dreams for the future, while the human moved quietly to other worlds, ready to bring hope wherever it was needed. Their paths had crossed at the perfect time, and the galaxy had been forever changed by a story of courage, love, and reunion. The bonds they formed remained strong, a testament to the idea that hope never truly dies, that love can reach across any distance, and that even one person's actions can change the fate of many. In the end, the alien queen was no longer a mother alone in grief. She was a mother united with her child, and a ruler who knew that the courage of one human had helped restore what she had thought lost forever.